I'm Liz with Liz Toth Properties, powered by EXP Realty. I'm a residential real estate agent in Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, I am meeting with the Department of Transportation, and we are going to learn more about the S-Line project. In honor of National Transportation Week, I am here today with Jason to talk about the S-Line. So Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
Glad to be here with you on our train, which we sell out every day, but today we're having a good conversation about what you're interested in.
Yeah. This is very interesting. So for those who are not familiar with the S-Line, why don't you give a good explanation of what it is? I think there are a lot of people out there that do not understand what it is or what's going on.
Absolutely. So the S-Line is a project to activate one of the oldest rail lines in the country in North Carolina, creating one of the most modern, technologically advanced railroads to really help our state grow and our region grow, carrying both people and freight, creating economic activity through that process. We are currently in what we call the preliminary engineering phase of the project. That is the necessary work to design the roads, the bridges, the tracks, and the stations. We have completed all of the necessary environmental documentation work with the US DOT, with the federal government, to clear the project, and now we're designing it, and over the next few years we'll move into the implementation phase of actual construction.
Okay. And how do you plan to minimize disruption, especially with, you had mentioned bridges, how are you going to minimize disruption to traffic and traffic flow and people getting around the triangle?
One of the most important elements of the project is to ensure that we develop a system that is efficient and safe. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is separating the roadway network from the railroad, and that involves building bridges, either railroad bridges or highway bridges, to ensure the highway goes over or under the railroad. To the extent we can, we're going to leave the existing roadway open while we're building the bridge and only have minimal disruptions to traffic. But the goal is to keep traffic moving with the whole project.
Okay. When do you think you'll actually start construction, and where would you start construction?
So we are actually under construction with one element of the project. Durant Road in North Raleigh was our first project that we under the S-Line program. So that project's underway. We expect to finish it next year, but the bulk of the construction we expect to see in the 2026-2027 timeframe.
Okay. Excellent. What steps are being taken to improve the infrastructure, such as building new bridges for the S-Line?
There's several major elements of the project from an infrastructure standpoint. One is to take a railroad that is basically a slow, freight railroad and turn it into a very efficient high-speed railroad. So that is involving basically building new tracks, adding a couple tracks here and there, but we're doing it with a relatively small footprint, mostly within the existing right-of-way, with the exception of some curves that we need to realign so that we can maintain a high speed on the trains. We're installing new signal systems for the trains, building some new bridges and drainage features, and then a lot of work with the roadway system. So we're really modernizing a lot of our roadway interactions, improving the safety by removing the at-grade railroad crossing, but we're also adding capacities. This project will benefit not just the railroad, but also the highway system.
Well, that's awesome. Once the S-Line is complete, how is that going to impact travel throughout Raleigh? Will there be additional routes in the future that go further distances?
Right. So really, this is what the big deal is with the S-Line, is that it is creating a backbone corridor for not just our region here in the Triangle to take rail to the various locations, whether it be to Durham or Charlotte, Atlanta in the future, some emphasis on connecting our region to Richmond, DC, New York, and the whole Northeast. So there'll be more frequency, it'll be faster, more reliable than current service, and we'll be bringing new trains along with it. Raleigh will serve as a real center point of the rail passenger network in North Carolina. So folks that are on the S-Line will have not just opportunities to travel on the S-Line, but to connect to other services that go to Asheville, to go to Wilmington, to go to Winston-Salem, Charlotte, Fayetteville, places like that. And we'll see more trains as we develop the system. One of the goals of the project really is to allowing our folks in our state that are moving here, that are visiting here, to take a mode of travel that reduces the congestion on the highway system. We do that by providing this service, which will have both short trips. For instance, if you're just trying to move around the Triangle area, like a trip between Wake Forest and Cary or Wake Forest and RTP, as well as longer trips all the way to Charlotte or up to DC. All of those trips, as we have more people ride the train, means that those are less auto trips on our highway network. Okay. So our highway network, we're working hard at the department to improve that. But the rail system is also a complementary element as well. The two projects and programs working together will keep our people moving and fluid.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a big thing is I've heard different Wake County commissioners speak about quality of life and how traffic can negatively impact the more time you sit in a car. I did live in Southern California for a period of time, and it just, when you sit in your car for so long, it's just not, it really impacts your overall life and your quality of life. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
How will the S-Line be different than the current service that you have set up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right today, because of limitations on capacity in the existing rail network, we have only really one train that we're able to connect the region to Richmond, DC, New York. And that's our Carolinian service, which is very successful and sells out very, very frequently. But the S-Line, because of the capacity and efficiency of the project, will allow us to run much more frequent trips so that there will be a lot more opportunities for folks moving here, for visiting here, to use the rail system throughout the day. Much more frequent trips, on a 2 hour, every 2 hours, having a train opportunity to get up and down the corridor.
Okay. And that's going to impact, how will it impact, access for jobs and, access around the triangle?
Right, exactly. So it means that, to your previous point, folks will be able to use the train service to access new job opportunities, both locally and longer distances if they have a business trip, that takes them to a farther distance away, and to not use that time just driving there, but using it productively on a train. They can do their work, they can have calls, they can have meetings, things that it's more difficult to do when you're spending most of your time just looking out a windshield and staring and holding onto a steering wheel. So in addition, we completed a study last year indicating that the rail system contributed $20 billion annually to North Carolina's economy. As we expand the opportunities, by improving railroads and adding more frequencies, that economic contribution will only increase.
Oh, that's amazing. So we talked a little bit about where the S-Line has started. What milestones should residents and people who are coming to the area expect in the future?
Right. So I think an important note is we've been working on the S-Line for really 2 to 3 decades now, and trying to make sure that we have all the proper documentation and planning for the project, working with the community. That was quite a bit of work to make sure that we had complete all those processes. We're now at the point where we're doing the hard engineering and looking at specifically what needs to be done to develop this program that'll be really transformative for the region. We expect basically to be in the final design phase by next year. As I mentioned before, construction beginning in 26, 27 on most of the elements, with trains running on the line between 2030 and 2031. That is our current goal, and that is basically the segment between Raleigh and Wake Forest. We will continue to look for opportunities in our partners with Virginia and the railroads, find funding to provide the additional extensions of the program. That's something we're working on, with a goal of basically completing the line into Virginia so that we can add all those additional frequencies connecting the northeast to the southeast of the project.
That's great. And so a lot of folks are not aware of the S-Line project and the progress that you've made, the incredible progress you guys have made. If people want to stay up to date with what's going on, or they want to learn more about it, where would they go to find out about that?
Right. Certainly on our webpage, our NCDOT includes information on the S-Line. If you go to ncbytrain.org, that provides information on our current services plus links to the project page. So that is certainly something that folks can do. But as we get into the next phases of the project, we'll also be doing a lot of direct outreach to the communities, both those that are on the Raleigh to Wake Forest segment, but also those communities that are outside of the Raleigh to Wake Forest segment. We've been working, for instance, with communities as far away as Youngsville, Franklinton, Henderson, as they prepare for this project to integrate it into their planning for their communities, so that as the development grows, out into those areas, they're looking at the S-Line as being part of their amenity that they can sell to those residents that are going to come to their communities.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's going to have a very positive impact.
If the audience doesn't already follow us on the various social media platforms, NC by Train is our handle on X, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And we would love for folks to join us in the journey in providing rail service to the state. And it also includes a lot of information about using the train to access special events, as well as our existing services.
Okay, that's great. Safety is always a top concern. What measures are you taking to keep people safe as the project develops and continues to advance in the future?
Well, that's a great question. So one of the most important things that we're doing, obviously, as I mentioned before, is separating the highway network from the railroad. That is one area where we know for sure that we're going to improve safety. And that's not just for roadway users, that's for bicyclists, pedestrians, folks using facilities, so that they don't ever have to access or get on the tracks. It also has the subsequent benefit of removing the horn noise that are required for trains as well. So there's an amenity there as well. We are introducing with this project new passenger rail equipment that will be modern and super efficient. The new equipment we'll be bringing to the service operates both on a diesel motor, a diesel electric motor, as well as overhead electric. So as those systems are employed on these types of projects, we'll be able to switch back and forth between those two systems. As everybody knows, rail is one of the most efficient forms of transportation there is. Steel wheels on steel rail have a super high efficiency, very low resistance, and so it is one of the most environmentally friendly ways to get around.
Okay, excellent. And then as far as environmental concerns, how are you taking steps to protect the environment during this project?
Right. And so we've spent a lot of time working with the agencies responsible for ensuring environmental compliance. We did that in the documentation that we had to provide. We're going to carry that forward into the actual implementation phase by ensuring that we're using all the best practices for managing construction. The good thing about rail projects is they have a much smaller footprint than some of our big highway projects. And so we can build a lot of what we need to build in a much smaller footprint with much lower impact to the environment.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about this rail car and what people should know about it?
Absolutely. So the car that we're on today is one of many in our fleet. We work hard to make sure that the passenger experience is comfortable, that they have the amenities they need on the train. So the great thing about the train is you have big seats like we're sitting on today. You have room to walk around. We have food and beverage on the train, on the Piedmont service included with your ticket. We have outlets at every single seat. We have great Wi-Fi for folks that want to use that amenity on our train. As you can tell, it's very comfortable in here. So it's really a great environment to move between locations.
Yeah, it's nice. It is very comfortable. I love these seats. It's nicer than the airplanes, right?
We like to think so.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to educate us on the S-Line. I know this information is going to be so helpful to a lot of people, so I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate being in this environment and getting to experience the train car. So thank you so much again for your time and your information that you've provided us.
Well, thank you, Liz. It's been a great opportunity to talk with you today. I certainly want to remind folks to, if they have questions about the S-Line project, go to ncdot.gov. You can search for the S-Line project there. And also go and follow us on social media at NC by Train at any of the different social media platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.